The great hall of the alien baron was filled with laughter, strange music, and the smell of roasted meat. His soldiers and servants stood around him, cheering and clapping. The baron, tall and covered in shining armor, was proud and cruel. He loved to mock others, and he enjoyed showing his power in front of his guests. That night he wanted to give a very special gift. A human had been brought to his hall, a man who stood calmly even when surrounded by enemies. The baron grinned, his sharp teeth glowing under the torchlight. He raised his hand, and the crowd grew silent. All eyes turned to the center of the hall. 2 guards entered, dragging a small chair with wheels. On it sat a young alien girl, her skin pale, her eyes dull. Her body did not move. Her hands rested on her lap, lifeless. She was the baron's daughter, paralyzed since birth. The hall fell silent for a moment. Then the baron's cruel laughter broke the air. "Here is my gift to you, human," the baron roared. "Take her. She is useless to me. She cannot walk, she cannot fight, she cannot rule. She is nothing but dead weight." The crowd laughed, their voices echoing against the stone walls. Some spat on the ground, others whispered insults. The human's face did not change. He walked forward slowly, his boots clicking on the cold floor. He looked at the girl in the chair. Everyone expected him to turn away, to reject the cruel joke, but instead he knelt down in front of her. His eyes were calm, but inside them burned a strange fire. He spoke softly, so only she could hear. "You are not broken," he whispered. "You are hidden." The girl blinked, her lips trembling. For the first time in years, she felt that someone was looking at her, not with pity or anger, but with hope. The crowd did not understand. They muttered and laughed, thinking the human was just playing along, but his voice carried truth. He touched her cold hand gently, and she did not pull away. She could not. But her eyes moved, following him, searching for something. The baron narrowed his eyes. He expected the human to be disgusted, to throw the girl aside. Yet here was this outsider, showing respect to the daughter he himself despised. Rage boiled in the baron's chest, but he kept his smile wide. He would not show weakness in front of his guests. "Take her, then," the baron sneered. "She is yours, but do not return her to me. She has no place in my house. If you want to waste your life caring for a broken child, do so." His words cut like knives, but the human did not flinch. The human lifted the girl from her chair. His arms were strong but gentle. The crowd gasped. Some laughed harder, thinking it was all part of the joke. Others felt uneasy, wondering why this human treated the girl with such care. The baron's face darkened, but he said nothing. The human carried her out of the hall, step by step. His shadow stretched long. Under the torchlight behind him, the hall erupted again in laughter and cruel jokes, but he did not look back. The girl's head rested weakly against his chest, her eyes wide with silent questions. As they reached the night air outside, the stars shone above them. The human looked down at her. "You are more than they see," he said, his voice steady, "and together we will show them." The girl's eyes glimmered. A single tear rolled down her cheek, not from sadness, but from something she had almost forgotten: hope. And so, the cruel gift meant to humiliate the human became the start of something far greater. In the heart of the night, as the baron laughed inside his hall, a new story began, a story that would one day shake empires and change the galaxy forever. The alien girl was silent as the human carried her into his small room at the edge of the baron's fortress. The walls were bare, the floor cold, but it was warmer than the cruel hall she had left behind. He placed her gently on a bed covered with a rough blanket. His hands moved carefully, making sure she was comfortable. She stared at him, confused. No one had ever treated her like this. To her father, she was a shame. To the servants, she was a burden. To the soldiers, she was nothing. But this strange human looked at her as if she was a secret waiting to be unlocked. That night, he sat beside her. He spoke slowly, using simple words. He pointed to himself. "Human." Then he pointed to her. "You." She blinked. She could not speak. Her lips only trembled. Yet her eyes followed his hand, and deep inside a spark lit. The human smiled. He repeated the words again and again, his voice calm, steady, never angry, never mocking. For hours he sat there, teaching her. Sounds, gestures, and meanings. She listened, silent but hungry. Her eyes began to shine with something long lost, attention and care. On the second night, he brought a small lamp. The warm light made the room glow softly. He held her hand gently and lifted one finger. "Move," he said. His voice was kind, but firm. She stared at her hand, her heart pounding. Nothing happened, but he did not give up. He whispered again, "Move." Her eyes filled with tears. She had tried so many times before, always failing, always punished for weakness. But this time, no punishment came, only patience. He waited, repeating the word. Softly hours passed, and then, a miracle. Her finger twitched. The human's eyes widened, but he did not shout. He only smiled, a smile full of pride. "Good," he whispered. "Very good." The girl blinked in shock. She had moved, even if just a little. Her heart raced. For the first time in her life, she felt she had done something right. Word spread quickly. The guards who spied on them whispered to each other. The broken girl moved her hand. "They," said. Some laughed, others frowned, wondering if it was true. When the Baron heard, he laughed so hard the hall shook. "Let the fool waste his time," he sneered. "It will amuse me to see him try to fix the unfixable." But in the small room, the human and the girl continued. Each night he spoke, he taught, he encouraged, he never mocked, never turned away. Slowly, her fingers twitched again, then her wrist, then her lips, as if she wanted to form words. The spark inside her grew brighter. One evening, the human brought her a wooden board. On it he painted simple marks. He pointed to a circle. "Sun," he said, then to a line. "Path." She watched closely. Her lips trembled, and with great effort she whispered, "Sss." The human's heart leaped. It was only a broken sound, but it was real. She had spoken. His smile filled the room. "Yes," he whispered. "Sun." She repeated it again, clearer this time. The girl gasped, shocked by her own voice. A tear slid down her cheek. She was not voiceless anymore. That night, as she lay in bed, her mind raced. The human believed in her. He saw her not as weak, but as someone with potential. Her father had called her useless, a mistake. But this human called her student, friend, even daughter of stars. His words painted a new image of herself, and it frightened her as much as it thrilled her. Outside, the fortress buzzed with cruel laughter and mocking words. The servants whispered that the human was mad. The soldiers bet on how long it would take before he gave up. Yet behind the closed door, something was happening that none of them could imagine. One night, as the human taught her a new word, hope, she looked at him with wide eyes. Her lips shaped the sound, slow and soft. Up. He nodded. Yes, hope. For the first time she understood the meaning. Hope was the warmth in his eyes, the patience in his voice, the spark in her chest. But hope is dangerous in a place ruled by cruelty. The Baron's spies returned to him with their reports. The girl speaks, she moves, they said. The Baron laughed again, but his laughter was tight. His cruel smile did not reach his eyes. In his heart, a shadow of fear stirred. If the joke he created grew into something powerful, it could one day challenge him. In the darkness of her room, the girl looked at her hands. She lifted a finger slowly, then a second. She whispered hope again. This time her voice was clearer, stronger. The human placed his hand over hers, smiling with pride. She had taken her first steps, not with her feet but with her spirit. And so the paralyzed girl, once given away as a cruel joke, began to awaken. Her body was weak, but her soul was rising. The fortress slept. But in that small room, history was being rewritten. The Baron's fortress was alive with cruel laughter. Every night soldiers and nobles gathered in the hall to drink, eat, and gossip. They mocked the human, calling him a fool. The Earthman thinks he can heal what even alien medicine cannot, they said. Cups slammed on tables and the air filled with jokes at his expense. Does he feed her like a baby? One soldier jeered. Maybe she calls him father. Another sneered. The laughter echoed, cruel and sharp. Yet beneath the noise, small whispers began to grow. Whispers that made some voices fall quiet, because some had seen things. They had. Seen the paralyzed girl, the one who never moved, slowly raising her hands. They had heard her broken words. They had seen her eyes glow faintly in the night like distant stars. And though many laughed, a few grew uneasy. The Baron heard these whispers. His rage burned, but he masked it with laughter. Let the fool play his game, he said. Let the broken girl pretend she lives. She will always be nothing, and he will only suffer for wasting his time. His words carried through the hall, but deep inside the Baron was watching more closely than ever. In the small room, the human kept teaching. The girl now spoke simple words. Her fingers moved slowly, clumsy but alive. Sometimes she smiled when she succeeded, a soft smile that lit the room. Other times she wept in frustration when her body refused to obey. But the human never scolded, never mocked. He only encouraged. One night the human placed a wooden spoon in her hand. Hold, he said. Her fingers trembled, weak at first, but then they tightened around the spoon. The human's heart swelled with pride. The girl gasped. She was holding something by herself for the first time. Her lips parted and she whispered, I can. Those two words spread like fire among the servants. Some laughed louder than before, saying the human filled her head with lies. Others grew silent, disturbed. If the Baron's daughter could move, if she could speak, what else could she do? The Baron ordered spies to stand guard outside the room. They watched as the girl tried to walk with the help of wooden supports. They saw her stumble, fall, and rise again with the human's hands steadying her. Their reports carried unease, not just mockery. When the Baron heard, his laughter shook the hall. She stumbles like a drunk animal, he mocked. Perhaps we should set her to entertain the guests. That would be her only worth. The soldiers roared with laughter. But later, when the Baron sat alone, his face darkened, his mind turned, with dangerous thoughts, for he knew his bloodline. He knew his daughter's body was weak. But her mind carried something ancient, something hidden. If the human had truly awakened it, then the cruel joke he played might come back to wound him. Meanwhile, the girl was changing. She began to ask questions in her broken voice. Why, help me, she whispered one night. Her eyes filled with confusion. The human looked at her and said simply, because you are more than they believe, and because you deserve to know who you are. Her heart shook. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Her father had only called her useless. Her people had only turned away. But this human gave her something more valuable than food or medicine. He gave her dignity. The human also began to notice strange things. When she concentrated, the air around her grew warmer. The lamp flame flickered without wind. Sometimes her eyes glowed so brightly, it lit the room. He said nothing, but his heart whispered the truth. She was awakening something powerful. The Baron's spies reported this too. They spoke of the glow, the strange energy, the human's quiet patience. The Baron slammed his fist against his chair. Enough, he growled. If she dares to grow strong, I will remind her who rules this house. His voice shook with hidden fear. The next morning, the girl tried to take 3 steps on her wooden supports. She stumbled, almost fell, but the human caught her. Again, she said in her broken voice. He nodded. Again. Step by step she moved, her legs trembled. Sweat poured down her face, but she did not stop. And when she fell, she laughed through her tears. She had taken steps. Outside the door, a soldier watched in silence. His cruel smile had faded. He did not laugh. He only whispered under his breath, "The broken girl walks." By nightfall, the fortress was split. Half still mocked, laughing louder than ever. The other half grew afraid of what might come. The human had turned the Baron's cruel joke into something dangerous. He had given the paralyzed girl a new life. And in the heart of the fortress, the Baron sat on his throne, his claws tapping against the armrest, his eyes glowing with anger and dread. The hall filled with laughter, but his own chest carried only fear. The girl he had thrown away like trash was no longer silent, no longer lifeless. She was speaking, walking, and perhaps soon rising. The mockery that once filled the fortress was now hiding something deeper. The first shadows of fear. The fortress grew restless. Every day brought new whispers about the Baron's daughter. The girl who once sat lifeless in a chair now spoke simple words. She moved her hands, she tried to walk. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and some swore they felt the air change around her. The mockery in the halls had not stopped, but beneath it fear spread like smoke. The human worked harder than ever. He built small tools out of wood and metal scraps, simple machines to help her train. He tied ropes to the ceiling so she could hold herself steady. He made wooden supports that allowed her to practice moving her legs. Every day she pushed herself, falling, rising, and falling again. But each time, she tried once more. One night, as rain poured outside, she stood holding the ropes with trembling arms. Sweat ran down her pale skin. Her legs shook, but she refused to give up. The human watched closely. "One more step," he said, his voice calm but full of belief. She gritted her teeth, her eyes burning with determination. Slowly, she moved one foot forward. Her knees buckled, but she forced herself to balance. Then something happened. Her body trembled, and a strange warmth spread through her chest. The ropes around her hands began to glow faintly. The human's eyes widened. The glow spread across her arms, down to her legs. The room shook lightly, and the small lamp flickered wildly. The girl gasped as a surge of energy flowed through her. Her feet, weak for so long, pressed firmly on the ground. She took not one step, but 3. Then, with a burst of light, the wooden support cracked, splinters flew across the room. The girl collapsed into the human's arms, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Her eyes glowed brighter than ever, like stars trapped in her soul. The human held her, both amazed and cautious. "You have power inside you," he whispered. She looked at him with confusion. "Power?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Yes, power that has been sleeping, now it begins to wake." The next day, the fortress buzzed with new rumors. A guard swore he had seen light shining from the girl's room. A servant said the wall shook as if, struck by thunder. The Baron heard every word. His laughter came loud and cruel, but his hands clenched the arms of his throne. His smile was forced. He called his advisors. "Tell me," he growled, "what is happening to her?" They bowed, afraid to speak. One muttered, "Perhaps the human has unlocked something old, something from your bloodline." The Baron's eyes burned with anger. He slammed his fist on the table. "She is nothing," he roared. "Do not forget, she is nothing." But deep inside he was not so sure. That night the human continued training her. He placed a small stone in front of her. "Move it," he said. She frowned, confused. "Hand?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not with your hand, with your mind, with the strength inside you." She closed her eyes, focusing hard. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. Her body trembled with frustration. But then, the stone shifted, rolling slightly across the floor. Her eyes flew open, glowing brighter than before. The human smiled. "Yes," he said. "That is your true strength." The girl gasped, her lips trembling. She whispered, "I'm not broken." The human placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "No," he said firmly. "You were never broken. You were only waiting." But power never stays hidden for long. Days later, as she practiced, a surge of energy burst from her hands. It struck the wooden wall, leaving a black scar across the stone. The sound echoed through the fortress. Guards rushed to see, and though the door was locked, they whispered of glowing lights and shaking floors. The Baron heard the reports. His smile faded. He stood in silence, his claws tapping the table. "This cannot be allowed," he muttered. His joke had turned into a threat. His daughter, the one he had mocked and discarded, was becoming something greater, something dangerous. Meanwhile, the girl sat on her bed, her chest rising with excitement and fear. She looked at her hands glowing softly. She whispered, "Hope," then added another word, "strong." Her voice was shaky, but her eyes burned with belief. The human sat beside her. "They will fear you," he said quietly. "But remember, fear means you are no longer weak." She nodded slowly, understanding. For the first time, she felt not only alive but powerful. Outside, thunder rolled across the night sky. Inside, the glow of her eyes lit the dark room, and in the halls of the fortress, laughter grew weaker, replaced by uneasy silence. The Baron sat alone on his throne, staring at the shadows. His cruel joke was slipping from his hands. He could no longer laugh it away. His daughter was awakening, and the power inside her was something even he could not fully control. The first sparks of her true potential had been unleashed, and soon, the galaxy itself would feel their fire. The Baron's hall was filled with voices, but none dared rise above his. Reports of his daughter's strange glow and hidden strength had reached him again. He sat on his throne, his armor shining under torchlight, but his face was dark. His claws tapped against the armrest, sharp and restless. His guests waited, silent, afraid of his mood. For days he had laughed at the stories, dismissing them as nonsense. But now, too many eyes had seen her. Too many whispers spoke of a girl who walked, spoke, and even commanded light. The Baron's cruel joke was slipping from his control, and it filled him with a rage he could barely contain. "She is mine," he growled. "She is my blood. She cannot be allowed to rise against me." His voice thundered across the hall. The soldiers bowed their heads. Some smirked, still convinced. The girl was nothing, but others shifted uneasily, remembering the glow they had seen with their own eyes. The Baron rose from his throne, towering over them all. "Bring her to me," he ordered. "Now." The command echoed through the fortress. Guards moved at once, their footsteps heavy against the stone floors. In her small room, the girl sat on her bed. Her eyes glowed faintly in the darkness. The human stood beside her, sensing what was coming. "He knows," the human whispered. "He will try to take you back." The girl trembled, fear rising in her chest. But then she lifted her chin. "No," she said in her broken voice. Free." The door burst open, soldiers pouring inside. Their weapons gleamed, their armor rattled. The human stepped in front of her at once, his eyes cold, his voice steady. "If you want her," he said, "you must go through me." The soldiers hesitated. They had faced many enemies before. But there was something about this human's stance, something unshakable. Still, the Baron's command weighed heavier than their fear. They raised their blades, moving forward. The girl's hands shook, glowing brighter as the soldiers advanced. She felt the warmth rise inside her chest, stronger than ever. The air around her shifted, her hair lifting as if touched by invisible wind. She whispered a single word, "Stop." The soldiers froze. A force like unseen chains wrapped around them. Their armor rattled as their limbs stiffened. Their eyes widened in shock. Some dropped their weapons, falling to their knees. The human turned to her, his face calm but proud. "Good," he said softly. "Very good." The fortress erupted in chaos. Servants screamed as the soldiers stumbled back into the hall, shouting of strange powers and light. The Baron stood from his throne, his teeth bared. "Enough!" he roared, his voice shook the walls. "Bring her before me, or you will suffer worse than death." Moments later, the human carried her into the hall. He placed her gently in front of the throne. Her eyes glowed as she met her father's. The Baron looked down at her, his face a storm of anger and fear. "You shame me," the Baron spat. You dare mock me with this trick. His claws tightened against the armrest. You are nothing. You will always be nothing. The girl's lips trembled. For years those words had crushed her spirit. But now, something stronger burned inside. She raised her hand, her voice shaking but clear. Nothing. Gasps filled the hall. The glow from her hand spread like fire, lighting the room. The soldiers stepped back, their confidence broken. The Baron's eyes widened. His cruel laughter died on his. The human stood by her side, his voice calm but firm. She is not your joke anymore. She is your reckoning. The Baron's rage exploded. He rose from his throne, towering over all. His claws sliced the air, sparks flying as they struck the stone. You will regret this, he roared. I will break you, both of you. His words shook the hall, but the girl did not bow. She stood taller than ever before, her body trembling but unyielding. Her glow spread brighter, reaching the ceiling. She whispered again, free. And the power inside her pulsed outward, knocking soldiers off their feet. The hall fell silent. The Baron stared at her, his rage burning. But behind it, a shadow of fear grew larger. He could no longer laugh her away. He could no longer deny her strength. His daughter, once thrown aside as a cruel gift, now stood against him. The Baron's rage was fire, but her hope was a rising sun. And in that clash, the fortress itself began to tremble. The Baron's hall still shook from the burst of energy. Soldiers lay scattered across the floor, their weapons clattering, servants huddled in corners, their eyes wide with terror. And in the center stood the girl, her body trembling but her eyes blazing with light. The Baron towered above her, his rage spilling like fire. Enough, he thundered. You dare stand against me, your own blood, I will tear this foolishness out of you. His claws scraped against stone as he moved forward, but the human stepped between them again, his calm presence like a shield. You see weakness. The human said, his voice steady. But what you fear is strength. Strength you could never crush. His words cut through the silence. The soldiers looked at each other, their confidence shaken. For years they had laughed at the girl, they had mocked her, ignored her, and treated her as nothing. But now they saw her glow, they felt her power, and something inside them shifted. The girl lifted her chin, her voice trembled, but carried across the hall. Not broken, not nothing. Her words were simple, but they echoed like thunder. The servants gasped, some covering their mouths in shock. Others whispered to each other. She speaks. She rises. The Baron snarled, but before he could, strike. The girl raised her hand. The glow spread, pushing back his advance. The air shook and the walls trembled. The power inside her was no longer hidden, no longer asleep. It flowed freely, and with it came something more dangerous than strength, hope. The servants stared, eyes wide. For the first time, they saw the possibility of change. The girl who had been weaker than all of them was now standing tall. If she could rise, maybe they too could rise. A murmur grew among them, a murmur that carried the seed of rebellion. The Baron roared, his voice shaking the walls. Silence, he demanded. But the more he shouted, the stronger the murmurs grew. His anger fed their courage, his cruelty became their fire. The human leaned close to the girl, whispering, They watch you. Every word, every step, shows them they are not alone. Give them the courage you have found. She nodded, her glow pulsing brighter. She turned to the servants and soldiers who trembled at the edges of the hall. I was nothing, she said slowly, her broken voice clear. But I rise, you can rise too. Her words lit a spark in their hearts. Small at first, but powerful, the weak began to see themselves in her. They too had suffered under the Baron's rule. They too had been mocked, beaten, silenced. The Baron's rage deepened. His claws tore through the floor as he stepped forward. You dare defy me? he bellowed. I gave you life, I can take it away. His voice was fire, but his eyes betrayed fear. Then something unexpected happened. A servant, trembling but brave, stepped out from the corner. His voice cracked as he shouted, "No more." Another followed, then another. Their voices joined together, shaky but growing louder. "No more," they cried. The hall filled with voices. The Baron's command was drowned out by the rebellion of the weak. Soldiers hesitated. Some still loyal raised their weapons, but many lowered them. Their hands shook. They had lived under the Baron's cruelty too, and now they saw another path. The girl raised her glowing hand. Her power spread through the hall, not as destruction, but as light. It filled the hearts of the broken, the forgotten, the weak. They felt strength flow into them, not from blades or armor, but from hope. The human stood at her side, watching the impossible unfold. A single girl, once mocked as useless, had sparked a fire that even the Baron could not control. Rebellion had begun. The Baron's roar shook the hall. "You are all traitors," he screamed. His voice cracked with fury. His massive form surged forward. But even as he struck, his power met resistance, not only from the girl, but from those who now stood with her. Weak hands lifted tools. Servants pushed back guards. Soldiers who once obeyed began turning on each other. The hall became chaos, but it was no longer the Baron's alone. His grip was slipping. The girl stepped forward, her legs trembling but steady. Her glow brighter than ever, she looked into her father's furious eyes and said, "You cannot break me. You cannot break them." Her voice carried beyond the hall, echoing into the fortress itself. Outside, more servants whispered the words, "No more." The fortress that had been filled with fear for years now pulsed with rebellion. The Baron's cruel rule had cracked, and through those cracks light poured in. The weak had found their voice, and their voice was rising louder and louder. The Baron's rage could not silence it. His claws could not crush it. His power could not erase it. For in the heart of the fortress, weakness had become strength, and strength had become rebellion. The fortress stood on the edge of chaos. The Baron's roar still echoed through the stone halls. Servants and soldiers shouted, some for him, some against him. The air burned with the clash of steel, but through it all, the girl's glow shone like a beacon. Her father towered above the crowd, his massive form casting shadows across the walls. His claws dripped with fury, his eyes burned with fire. "You think you can defy me," he thundered. "You, a broken child, and you, a foolish human, you will both be crushed beneath my hand." His voice shook the chamber like thunder. The girl trembled, but she did not fall. Her legs shook, her chest heaved, but she held her ground. The human stood beside her, his eyes calm, his voice steady. "He is afraid," the human whispered. "That is why he shouts. That is why he threatens, because he knows you are no longer weak." The Baron charged forward. His claws tore through the air, his power shaking the floor. The soldiers stepped back, none brave enough to stand in his path. The girl lifted her hands, light bursting from her palms. The energy struck his chest, pushing him back a single step. He snarled, his rage unbroken. "Is this all you can do?" he spat. Her knees buckled, the glow flickered. Fear crept into her heart. But then she looked around. She saw the servants standing with courage in their eyes. She saw the soldiers who once mocked her now lowering their blades. She saw the human, his steady gaze locked on hers, and she remembered the word he had given her. Hope. The glow inside. Her chest burned brighter, spreading through her arms, her legs, her whole body. She straightened her back, her eyes blazing like twin stars. She whispered, not in broken voice, but in clear strength, "I am not nothing." The Baron froze, his fury clashing with disbelief. He raised his claws again, but this time her power surged like a storm. The walls rattled, the ground cracked, and light burst from her hands. Soldiers shielded their eyes. Servants fell to their knees in awe. The Baron staggered back, his armor scorched by her strength. The human stepped forward, his voice carrying across the hall. "She was your joke, your shame, but she is no longer yours. She belongs to herself, and to all who have suffered under you. His words struck deeper than any blade, for they carried truth. The Baron roared, his voice filled with desperation now. He leapt forward, claws raised for the kill. But the girl did not flinch. She raised both hands, her glow exploding into a blinding wave. The air cracked, the hall shook. The Baron slammed into an invisible wall of light. His roar turned into a cry of pain. The fortress itself seemed to groan under the force. Torches blew out, leaving only her light. The servants gasped as they watched the unthinkable. Her father, the mighty Baron, forced to his knees, his claws scraped against the floor, his strength crushed not by weapons but by the daughter he had cast away. The girl's voice rang clear. You called me broken. You called me nothing. But I am more. I am strength. I am hope. Her words thundered like drums, and the weak in the hall rose with her. Hope! They cried. Hope! The Baron roared again, trying to rise, but her light held him down. He spat with rage. You are my blood. You cannot escape me. But she shook her head, her glow shining brighter. I am not your shame. I am not your joke. I am your end. Her final burst of power swept through the hall. The Baron's armor shattered. His roar turned into silence, and at last the cruel ruler who had mocked, beaten, and enslaved was cast down. The hall fell quiet. Only her glow remained, soft and steady. The girl lowered her hands, her body trembling. The human caught her as she leaned against him. Her voice weak but sure. Free. The servants and soldiers dropped their weapons. Many wept. Some shouted in triumph. For the first time in years, the fortress was no longer ruled by fear, but by hope. The human looked at her with pride. You were never broken. He whispered, you were only waiting to rise. She smiled faintly, her eyes shining. She had been given as a cruel gift, but now she was something greater. She was a symbol. And far beyond the fortress, across the stars, her story would spread. The tale of a girl once mocked as useless, who rose to challenge cruelty itself. The tale of a human who saw her true potential, and together they lit a fire that would not die. The weak had risen, the strong had fallen, and the galaxy would never be the same.